Okay.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Asian Hustle Network podcast. Today, we have a very special guest with us. His name is Michael Yamashita. After graduating from Wesleyan University with a degree in Asian Studies, photographer Michael spent 7 years in Asia, which became his photographic area of specialty. Upon returning to the US, Michael began shooting for the National Geographic, as well as other American and international magazines and clients. Combining his dual passions of photography and travel has culminated in a career spanning over 35 years, an Instagram following of more than 1.8 million, and most recently entered him into the world of NFTs. Michael's most recent exhibitions, currently traveling the world, are focused on the theme of the Silk Road journey, following both the overland and maritime Silk Road routes. In addition to Michael's focus on Asia, his work has taken him to 6 continents. Michael has also published 13 books, mostly inspired by his 30 National Geographic stories. While not traveling, Michael lives with his family in rural New Jersey, where he maintains a studio and is an active volunteer fireman. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm going to have to correct a few things. One, my name is Yamashita. That's the best pronunciation. The I silent. So it's
Yamashita. Okay.
Yamashita. And I have, I'm working on 40 years of for the
Whoa.
Geographic. And I
Wow.
have 15 books, two of which are sitting idle somewhere in China because I left a lot on the table when the COVID shutdown happened. And so actually I was on my way there in February of 2020. And then suddenly, of course, my flight got canceled. China closed its borders and I haven't traveled since. So
Oh wow.
anyway, yeah. So anyway, where do I start?
Oh man, we want you to start from the very beginning. Like what was your
Okay.
upbringing like? And how did you develop such a passion for travel and photography? Because obviously it shows throughout your entire work. We're watching some of your clips and videos earlier, and your knowledge is so extensive, not in the technology that you use to photograph the images, but also the rich history of the location and city of the people.
Right.
So where does passion come from? What was your upbringing like?
Okay, well, that's what happens if you've been doing it for 40 years and concentrating on my area of interest and expertise, which is the Far East. So obviously, I've spent a lot of time. Well, I used to have a life of 6 months a year on the road. And, I've now been home for a year and a half. So I'm in uncharted territory actually here and learning how to live in one place. And actually, it's been good for myself and the family and other things. But let's start at the beginning where I grew up in Montclair, New Jersey. And my father was a Japanese salaryman for Mitsubishi and had a regular upbringing, except very few Asians living in Montclair in those days. And when we were called out for a group photo for the school, my brother and I were usually put out there with maybe the one black guy and a very odd situation in that we were real minorities. So, but after Wesleyan, where I studied Asian history, I went to Japan. I got out of I won't go into the detail, but I somehow escaped Vietnam, and my graduation present was a one-way ticket to Japan where I bought a camera. And just like most amateurs, you shoot pictures of what you're experiencing, seeing, and send them back to your friends and family just to kind of show them what life is like. And I got really hooked into the camera and just kept going to the next level after the next level. And after living in Japan for 4 years, I decided I would try to be a photographer. What a great lifestyle. What a scam it would be if I could travel the world and take pictures. And I did have my eye on the Geographic and Anyway, I honed my skills in Asia for another couple of years, shooting mainly in Singapore. I got the major client at the time was Singapore Airlines, and I got that account, and they sent me everywhere in Asia to shoot pictures for their advertising catalogs. And
Oh, wow.
anyway, after that, I had a portfolio worth looking at, and I went to National Geographic. And this is in the late 70s, and I was shooting starting in 1979, 1980 was my
Wow.
first. And of course, the first assignment I had was in Hokkaido, Japan. So it took me back to my roots, and I was a cocky guy. I walked in there and said, I can do a better job than any of you guys
I mean,
because
you're
I
right.
speak Japanese and I speak the language and blah, blah, blah. And anyway, after one success, I never looked back.
Wow, that's amazing. You know, that's definitely a life worth living, in my opinion. A lot of us kind of aspire to be like that. We also want to be like photographers, and you want to travel. And the fact that I feel like what you've done is basically trailblazing the trail for a lot of us. You know, like that. I'm pretty sure at that time your parents had different plans for you for your career, right? They wanted you to have a stable job and everything. What was that process like, telling them that, hey, I'm gonna move back to Japan and then I'm gonna, start taking pictures around Asia? Like, what was their initial reaction regarding that? And what was the industry like at that point? You know, like take us back to like 1979 or in the 1970s. What was the industry like for like Asian Americans to sort of break into that field? That's something that we want to hear more about too.
Yeah, well, first of all, my father was actually very supportive, of course, very supportive about sending me to Japan. And I was able to get a visa, long-term visa through family friends in Gifu, where my family is from. And so that was helpful. And then, yes, he was kind of at the end of his career with Mitsubishi, and he was about to kind of get laid off and retirement and all that stuff. And so he very much was supportive of me going into something that was maybe that one day what time he dreamed about. In fact, when I was in high school, he was the guy with the Nikon camera shooting pictures of me while I played sports, and he was a very avid amateur, and he would always say, Mike, I hope one day to see your big picture up in Times Square. There was a big board over there, and I forgot, a big display for Kodak, and so he used to pass that every day while he was working in the city. And so that was his dream for me, was that I would have a photograph there, and actually I did. But anyway, so that was the start. And of course, I met a lot of good photographers in Asia, and actually coming from the United States was an advantage, because people wanted to hire me because they said, oh, we got this guy who's from New York, which I would tell them, of course, I could come from New York, and I had no experience, but you tell them whatever you need to. And and I got plenty of work. So when I came back, then I started taking my portfolio around, and yes, I was I didn't know any other Asian photographers. Well, maybe one or two, but we were a very small minority, and especially getting into the geographic. So as I was mentioning to you before, probably my most proudest achievement, and without even having thought anything about it, is it was pointing out at the annual geographic seminar, which is for the photographers in January each year, where we all get together and spend a week meeting with the editors and having parties and giving slideshows and all of that. And the editor, Susan Goldberg, was in one of the sessions was saying that we have this year this was 2019, the last seminar, and she said, we have 40% photographers or people of color, writers or photographers, and women now working for the magazine. She shows this chart in 2000, difference between 2019 and 2018 and 2008 is there was only one photographer of color or one contributor of color and writer or photography, writing or photography, and that was me. And it turns out, going back further, that I was the first full-time, not full-time, I never was a staffer. I was the first regular contributor, photographer of color for the first and only for many, many years at the Geographic, from when I entered in 1980, pretty much right up well, now, of course, there are quite a few and many of my friends, Asian friends, now working for the magazine. But yeah, I'm very proud to say that I indeed was a pioneer, and it was nice to be recognized at that as that. And yeah, I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about it, but there was myself and one Asian picture editor, Elizabeth Chang Christ, who she and I collaborated on quite a few stories, and we used to always go, "Oh yeah, the Asia team," because yeah, it was a rarity. And the other thing is that most of my stories were in Asia, so it was a good combination.
That's awesome to hear, and it's good hearing what the perspective was like back then, and seeing how far that we gone. Although there's still a long way to go before we get more people into the industry. I want to start by saying, thank you, Mike, for all the work you've done. As I mentioned before the podcast, that a lot of your work has impacted my childhood. My parents, for some whatever reason, subscribed to National Geographic, even though they did not speak a lick of English. And I end up reading National Geographic history a lot. So you really had profound effect on my upbringing and my childhood. So I like to thank you for that. The other question I had is as you're traveling, right, and you're seeing especially with your work with China and Marco Polo and the Silk Road and everything, have you extensively looked into the history of these places before you started taking pictures of the place, or was it vice versa, that you started coming there first, feeling the experience, feeling the history, taking pictures, and finding out the history? I'm kind of curious, what was the thought process like behind your creative work? Because whenever I look at your portfolio, whenever I look at your Instagram, it's really clear to me that you really understand what you're looking for in a particular city, right? For example, I think your team sent me over a video of you taking photography pictures of the New York skyline. Right. And with that, it's that I kind of noticed that as you're describing certain things, you're like, oh, I want to capture the ripples, the shadows, the Times Square situation, the history, the hustle bustle. It's very clear to me that you understand the culture of the city as well before you take the picture. So I want to understand what the thought process as you're going through these historical places. What was the chicken or the egg? Did you take pictures first, or did you learn about history first, or did you walk through it there, stay there for a couple of weeks, and then be like, okay, this is what I want to capture in the National Geographic picture or my own personal photography?
Okay, well, first of all, there's a lot of research that happens, and my most successful stories have been the ones that I've proposed, which means even more research, because in the proposal process, you got to know your subject, and when you are making a proposal, you would have to kind of show in words what we call a one-pager, the photographic possibilities, because Geographic, being a photo magazine, they want to know, okay, well, what's the story going to look like? And so a lot of research goes in at that stage. Also, you become the expert because you work there all the time. And I've done most of the China stories over the years for the Yellow magazine. And, I kind of knew what would be the next story, because in my case, I ended up very methodically going through all the kind of the icons of China, from Silk Road and of course Marco Polo and and the Sea Silk Road with Zheng He and various Great Wall, Grand Canal. I did them all. In fact, to the point where now I'm not even, I always ask my friends, hey, is there any other story that I may have missed? Because it's been I like doing cultural stories and shooting places and things that are fast disappearing. If I have any legacy, it's the fact that I have a large archive of photography that can't be duplicated because so much of what I photographed no longer exists. So that has been a big part of my process. So, I'm always looking for some kind of new story, and usually it's very remote. I haven't done many city stories, though, of course, New York is across the river. It's about an hour, a little more than an hour from where I'm living here now in New Jersey. And of course, my base. And hey, somebody says, please go shoot New York from the air in a helicopter, which is what I was doing last month, which is what I sent you. And the Sony is a big sponsor of mine, and that's what that was for. But yeah, it's a combination of, and then of course, when you get on the ground, there's other stuff that happens, and my fixers, the guys who, or the women who put the subject in front of me, I say are the unheralded, the unsung heroes of journalism, because these people you depend on them to not only find you the subjects that you have already kind of researched and are on your shoot list. That's the point, is I'm not wandering looking for something to shoot. I am there in the place that we are going to, because I know there's a picture that exists there. And so we're going to go make a picture of something. And so that, I'm working in Tibetan Plateau, where I have been along for quite a while now. We map it out, knowing exactly, okay, well, there's this great monastery here. They have, it's at the top of a mountain, which normally they are, which means you got to climb to get there. And there's a lot of logistical stuff, but, I'm looking for something that is either in my mind's eye because it's important for the story, or there is something I've read about or heard about that I know is going to make a picture, and that's why I'm there.
I love that. I love that you think it through before you actually go to the location and learn about and research about the history of each and every single landmark and location, and just becoming an expert in learning about the history and stories of these landmarks in your photographs. I do want to know, how have you seen your style change over the years, from when you were shooting in Asia? Did you have one specific subject or thing that you just loved shooting? And how has that changed over the years?
Well, it's, making a living as a professional is often, it's not your choice. You're looking for subjects that somebody is interested in seeing to publish a photograph, or if it's a commercial client, there are reasons why they need a picture of that. So it's not like I have time to of course I do personal work as well, but most of it is especially in the early years was, I'd jump at whatever the job was, even if I didn't know the place or didn't even know how to shoot the picture. I'd say yes and then figure it all out later. So it works in many ways. But and you got to be quick on your feet. That's journalism is actually something that I don't think you even need to study. It's quite logical what is necessary for a story, I think. And anyway, I do create usually a shoot list, and we work from that. And even though I've been very fortunate to work for the Geographic, who gives used to, I have to qualify because it's not the same now, but in its heyday, they would give you a lot of time and resources to do definitive work. And so Marco Polo, I spent like 3 years on. So,
Oh, wow.
that sounds like a lot of time, but when you go through a dozen countries, it translates not quite so, luxurious in terms of days. So, you are moving fast. It's not like you're waiting for the perfect sunset in every place, or, you don't have time for that. You're making decisions to how you're going to spend that time, and so it actually the time becomes quite tight.
Yeah, that actually does make a lot of sense. So thank you for sharing that, by the way. I mean, 3 years in Marco Polo to us sounds like it's quite a bit of time, but actually when you're traveling that much, it's not that much time at all. You're like, wait a minute, where'd all the time go? So the next question I have is, I really noticed that you're a pretty avid user in social media, and I really like the mentality to how you are adopting newer social media platforms like Clubhouse to really get your work out there and your info out there. Um, has that always been something that you've been like integrating into your work as well, like leveraging social media to really get your work out there? And how did that whole process start for you? Because I know like there's a lot of famous photographers out there that sometimes refuse to use social media to like get the work out there,
I
or
don't think
even
you can anymore.
yeah.
I think, especially now with the demise of print and the lack of outlets to have your work displayed, you've got social media. So it's been the best time for photographers to strut their stuff, because you've got Instagram and you got Facebook, and they all are picture oriented. So, you can't ignore it anymore, and it becomes part of your portfolio. So I think it was back in 2013, the Geographic was just getting into Instagram, and nobody knew what that was. And so they said to the photographers, could you please start posting? And so we did. And now they have 170 million followers. And, in its heyday, the National Geographic had 11 million subscriptions, and maybe a base of 40 million readers. And I can tell you right now, my Instagram is bigger than the circulation of the magazine in print. Maybe it's about 1.5 million worldwide. The magazine itself, the actual physical paper magazine, is quite diminished from those days. And you can't ignore these new any ways to display your photography, and which is why I kind of got into the NFT space as well.
Yeah, let's talk about that. NFT is so new that a lot of us are quite, I don't want to say we're scared, but we don't know enough about it. And just seeing like the wild prices that come up, like artists selling out their stuff for $1 million in like 60 seconds, right? How did you get into NFT, and what about NFT that excites you about getting your work into NFTs?
Okay, well, any kind of new visual medium you can't ignore. And so I tell this to all my friends and colleagues, or we discuss it, because the other thing I have to say is, my full disclosures, I have family, my two nephews, one in Paris and one in Hong Kong, are in the biz. I mean, one's a miner in Paris, and the other is my nephew Alex in Hong Kong is in the marketing side. And so they are, but Bitcoin is what they're dealing with, and mining means blockchain and all of that stuff. So I knew something about it, and also my daughter is a big cat lover, so she was in crypto cats, crypto kitties before I knew what an NFT was. So, but and the other thing is, there is a team of people behind me for that. And if you ask me to explain in detail what these two guys who are Harvard MBAs are doing for me in taking care of most of the technical, I can't. They allow me to concentrate on the creative, which is what I want to do. And as far as minting and doing auctions and all of that other stuff is, I would be very challenged. And I also have a NFT artist who knows the tools, and so she's been very helpful in showing me what's new with AI and what can be done for adding movement to stills. And I've never been interested in video. My art has always been the still photograph, and now I'm moving into a different kind of with the NFTs. One of the things you will notice immediately if you see a lot of them is usually there's some movement and sound. And so like video, sound and motion, which, as I say, I've never really found because I've done a couple of documentaries and I've been a presenter, and I know many good videographers who I would not attempt to compete with. So, I never got into it. And now I'm working with sound and motion with NFTs, and it's been eye-opening. The other thing is a very different group of people than my almost 1.9 million now followers, and who are traditional, photography enthusiasts. They are different from the NFT crowd, who comes from a very different mindset and are used to looking at different art than that. Now, of course, photographers entered the space too, and I intend to also use or show a lot of still photography. So anyway, it's all a work in progress. That's just brand new. So if you ask me what the future is like, I'm not quite sure, but I am. I don't think any of my there's maybe one or two colleagues from Geographic who are working on them, but it's rare right now. But we all talk about it because there was people who made 69 million or whatever, and so that gets photographers talking. So
anyway. I want to say first off, shout out to your team for supporting you and getting you from NFTs. You know. And seeing a transition from a legend like yourself into NFTs, it's very awesome to see that you're so open-minded to do something like that. I mean, transitioning from traditional photography to Instagram, social media is already scary enough. But now you're practically an early adopter in this whole new world called NFTs, where, when you come into that world, you see a bunch of colorful pictures, some weird images. You're like, how does this relate back to like the stuff in history that I like to do? And the fact that you kept a very open mind. And I like the fact that you were very proactive in getting into the NFT community as well. Like I do see, and for reference for you guys listening, I got introduced to Mike from a NFT consulting person, whatever. That's how we connected. So I really appreciate that open-mindedness to really get into this new world. Because even for myself, even for Maggie too, like we still find a lot of fear of us getting in there because we just don't know, right? But a part of success is being able to identify new trends and getting there early enough in order to be the big whale and make the big wave, right? And that's what you demonstrate over and over, is that your entire career, you're always positioning yourself to make sure that you succeed, right? You demonstrate with that with moving to Japan, finding part-time gigs, getting yourself on Instagram, getting yourself to almost 1.9 million followers on Instagram in like the heyday, and having more distribution currently right now than National Geographic. That's awesome. And now you're getting to NFT, which I'm pretty sure in the next 3 to 4 years, you're going to see a mainstream influx of NFTs where it's basically normalized, if not already normalized already. You're seeing NFT artwork in Times Square. You're seeing that in bigger cities, and you're getting into it quickly. So the next question, I know you mentioned earlier, like don't ask me about the future NFT, blah blah blah. But I'm kind of curious too, like how have you been adapting your style and your work and conveying that vision to your team and getting your work into the NFT stuff? How have you been conveying that stylistic point of view to your team and really get that part moving?
Well, that's I struggled with that too in the beginning, because I said, well, how do I transition from still photographies and this traditional photojournalism, which it means photographs that are not manipulated. They are, I'm used to I'm a storyteller, and those photographs, my style, if you want to talk about it, is I like putting all the information into a single picture. I'm not used to doing multi-picture spreads. And anyway, so to make that transition was, I had to work it out in my mind how this, again, would work, moving from a traditional to something that I very unfamiliar. So Zoe Winters, my collaborator, started showing me some stuff where she took a photograph of mine and put movement into it, taking me back to the moment when I actually took the picture. So probably the most iconic photograph is the one of I call it Sea of Monks, and it's well known. It's just maybe 100 monks sitting in the snow, and they're before prayer, they're sitting around, and that fidgety period where you are waiting for anything to happen. They're looking around. I'm up on a hill looking down at them. I've got a long lens on, and the photographic process is when you are framing, you're seeing through the lens that these faces and watching the body English. And I see the kid with a yellow scarf on, and he's moving and changing expression. And there's a guy over on the left side who's kind of giving me the evil eye because he doesn't really want me to be up there taking a picture of him. And there's somebody else playing with the prayer beads. And so there's all this stuff happening, and I'm up there going, click. Oh yeah, this kid, the kid's moving. He stands up, click. And suddenly it was like a eureka moment. It was like, okay, this is exactly what it was like when I was really taking the picture. So then there it was. I could through AI take the viewer back to the moment where I clicked the shutter. And so we got one of the monks to move, and then we got all of them, not all of them, maybe half a dozen or more, to move and do have expression. And that is what I saw, and that is what now you can see with this NFT, which you would never be able to do before. There was another example with a window where there's slight movement, which is what I would be doing when I'm framing. And then I had opened this window and the dust flew out. And so she was able to put in the dust, and then the sun was coming up, and she was, through multiple frames, was able to show that as the sun came up. I only had about 10 minutes of good light. And then once it's up, then, it's all over. But it was coming up through the smoke of the local villagers' fires. And it was just this nice moment. And so through AI, I could recreate that. And it was like, okay, this is what it was like when I took the picture. And that's what I tried to achieve with the first NFTs that we had out there, was indeed to take the viewer back to the moment of creation.
Wow, that is really, really creative. Like that's something I haven't thought about too, because most NFTs I see, it's like digital art,
Yeah.
But that is a really good point of view, like being able to capture that one moment where it's like, as you're doing your work, that's actually, I feel like this is just as important as producing great photography. It's like, how do you do it? What is the technique? And I feel like nowadays everything is trending towards, how do you do it? How do you done that? How did you capture that moment? Because I feel like, I'm pretty sure you notice this too, but throughout history, like things sort of repeat itself over and over. Before it's about beautiful photography, and now it's about the experience. And I think NFT captures that really well. And shout out to Zoe Winters as well. Like I haven't personally met her in person, but I met her in Clubhouse.
Oh,
She's definitely one of the persons that you should definitely know in the NFT world. And I'm glad you guys are working together.
yeah. Well, anyway, that's why I need a team. And I actually, they chose me. It wasn't like I just said, "Oh yeah, well, I want to get into this," and started working at it. I really needed, and I think anybody who's getting into it for the first time needs people who have that expertise, who know the space and know how to navigate through the this all this new jargon. Just the vocabulary is daunting. And yeah, NFT people are different. And you do need to get to know the community. It's not the same as this anonymous crowd that follows me on Instagram, which is I'm very happy and with Instagram because of the instant feedback, and that in itself has been a great thing. That shooting for the magazine years ago, you have a 30-40 page story, and a couple of months after the story is published, you might get one or two letters that of readers who ask questions about the story, and that's the only feedback you got. Now, every time I post a photograph, I get this flood of comments, and I read every one. It's part of it is the interaction between yourself and your base, your followers. So same thing with the NFT community. It's not that different.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with what you said about, interacting with your audience. And I love that you respond to each and every one of those comments, because that is really what makes the difference and reels people in to look at your work again and again and again, because you're really building a community there. And I think it's so beautiful how you mentioned that you're able to capture that specific moment and have the viewer of the photograph see exactly what you were seeing at that exact moment. I did see a video, a Sony video of you mentioning, you capture the eyes of the person who's in that photograph, right? And that is really what is the gateway to their soul. The eyes are the person's soul, right? I want to know more about your photographic process. To someone maybe who's like an amateur photographer, what do you do to make sure that your photograph is extremely powerful? Because Brian and I, we've seen so many of your photographs, and all of them are just so powerful. And you can definitely see the power and the strength of the person's eyes. Talk about your photographic process in that sense.
Oh, okay. Well, you're talking about portraits or people, and of course, good stories, a mixture of both sense of place as well as the people, and illustrating the culture. In my case, in most of my stories, and this is a business where you don't fail, and because if you do, after somebody is spend a lot of resources on you and you're out there, and these stories are costly, and you don't come back with the goods, you're really in trouble. So I am working with a picture editor in the case of the Geographic, and we're trading information, and they're pointing me in which direction, and then looking at the film in the old days, or even digitally now we see everything immediately. But you're looking to make photographs that have impact, and I am looking for what makes a great photograph, for any photograph, which is good light and an interesting moment, an interesting subject, and colorful or good composition. This is the standard, and obviously I need to have a photograph that relates to somebody, and hopefully grabs them and brings some emotion. So the way I look at it in the magazine is, it's a big, thick magazine, and there's many stories, over 100 pages, and that when you look at it, you're flipping the page, right? So you're flipping the pages, and bango, up comes this photograph that's visually arresting to the point where that person, that viewer, stops. So you're page stopping them, and they might study the photograph and read the caption, and the hope is that maybe after reading the caption that maybe they'll read the story. So that's the way I see my photographs, as page stoppers, something that grabs the viewer and holds them, makes them want to read more, watch, and get more out of that photograph, and make some emotional connection. So that's what I'm looking for.
Mhm.
And if you have to have a lot of success, and of course you're looking at photographs from a 40-year career, so I'm not just putting up any photograph, but at the same time, there's a lot of new stuff. It's not like they're all old photographs that have been, tried and true and published before. Also, when I'm in the field or anywhere, I'm constantly taking photographs of new stuff, and that also comes up on the Instagram. And yeah, you better hope your stuff is good and people are taking notice, and you get there by studying a lot of good photography and by practice, and that's the way every photographer learns and progresses and goes to the next level.
Mhm. I guess the next question I really want to ask, and really dive deep into your answer just now too. It's like, whenever you're taking these pictures, right, you're looking at someone's eyes, and you're looking at the composition, the lighting, everything. Internally, how has that made you feel, and how has that made you grow as a person? Because when you're looking through the eyes of so many people and their stories and experience and their hardships or successes, I'm pretty sure that has profound effect on how you view the world and how you view yourself. How does that make you feel about yourself as you're learning more about how the world works and you're learning more about internally how you work? Because we personally feel, by having so many guests on our podcast, is that your business or creativity cannot outgrow you as a person. So in order for you to achieve higher level, you have to continually take in what you learn and grow. Right?
Yeah. Well,
I'm kind
you
of
grow.
curious.
Yeah. Well, you grow with every story, and as I say, you become the expert on whatever it is you're working on. My how can I say this? This is this. A lot of the subjects that I shoot, I can't communicate with it because they're in. Where I work. You need an interpreter. I don't speak Tibetan or Chinese. My Japanese is pretty good, but often you are shooting subjects that you can't communicate with. You can't communicate with these people, but you are, living their lifestyle. And of course, that affects you, and is also one of the joys of the job. Is there was one guy used to always go on an assignment, and he'd come back dressed somewhat in whatever the local. Well, I don't go that far, but you get really involved. And for example, now my my passion now has been Tibet for the last half a dozen years. I've been making many trips there and trying to make pictures of this very fast disappearing culture, and hopefully, it's similar things that are happening, obviously, in Xinjiang, and it started much earlier in Tibet, and so I'm kind of in a race to capture this the lifestyle and culture and the religious practices of Tibetans, and so I'm passionate about them, and of many of my subjects, as I say, I can't communicate with them directly because of the language barrier, but you're living out there, you're living in the yurts and hanging out with these guys who are looking for the worm in the summertime with the magic worm, which has changed their lifestyle. That's a whole nother story. I don't want to get off track, but anyway, there is a changing culture there over how they make their living, and of course, they now have motorcycles and cars rather than camels or donkeys or whatever else they used to travel with, and horses, ponies, of course. But anyway, it's a privilege also to be in this position to spend major time. When I go there, it's not an easy place to get to, and so when I'm there, I'm spending a month or two at a time and totally immersing myself in that culture. And that's it's not like more of a one-to-one thing where I'm communicating. It's more of a I live their lifestyle for a month or two of the year.
Wow. Yeah, thanks for sharing that with us. And that's such a powerful experience. Being able to have the privilege to see other people's culture through their eyes and communicate with them and actually speaking the language. I think we all have that experience too. Like, how do you communicate with someone who can't speak our language? And we become more like connective, where we try to find similarities in order to describe certain things. So I think that's a wonderful, like, emotionally, physical, spiritually journey that you went through. So I guess as we're running close to time, I'm gonna ask one or two questions left. The first question is, as for our listeners who are getting into this industry or learning photography, do you have any tips and advice on how they can improve their early adopter mindset? Because I feel like clearly you have a strong early adopter mindset that it's very crucial for any business to succeed. What tips and advice do you have on fostering that mentality and seeking out opportunities where other people can't see?
Well, I think it's about passion. You really got to love what you're doing. I mean, to decide to be a photographer is difficult because the road to becoming successful is very long and hard, and it's tough. It's a 1% or 1% of 1% job. It's not a job, it's a lifestyle. So it's your passion, your love for the medium and for what you're doing, where you make a commitment and you eat, sleep, drink photography 24/7. And that's what it took for me. And that's what it's going to take for anybody just starting or anybody who's in the business now. I can guarantee you loves what they are doing. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it, because it's not about the money. There can be, but the rewards are different. And I think in terms of they had that kind of a chart